For those of you who know me, I was becoming increasingly anxious as Chris tried to allow us all to hear Colin, because I don't have the facility that Colin has for projecting his voice. So can you hear me at the back? Yeah, good. Thank you, Chris, for that. I was reflecting when I was driving here this morning, as we all do, that the last time I was in this room, in this position, was a couple of weeks ago, and we'd done some work with the Scottish Book Trust, and what happened was we had a year's funding to allow local people to do two things, and one was to tell their own stories about North Ayrshire and living in North Ayrshire, and the second thing was to write songs. Now, the good news is I'm not going to sing. For those of you who are old enough to know, my name was Nolan before I was married, so I grew up with people expecting me to sing at every opportunity, so that's not going to happen. However, I did think that today is maybe a bit like that evening last week, because what happened was we had a whole range of people who, from a whole range of backgrounds and perspectives, told us a story that they wanted us to hear. And today isn't about North Ayrshire having best practice in any of this. It's not about North Ayrshire having any of the solutions, but it's really that we've been very fortunate to have the support of the Improvement Service, and specifically, I think, all of our community planning partners, to get to a place where we hope that we can begin to see the challenge that Colin posed to us today becoming something that we can genuinely understand and work towards. And it is that holistic approach to how we work and who we work with. So I'd like today not to give you any kind of lesson or even indeed overview of this, but I would like to talk about some of the ingredients that are important to us and some of the partners to help us to put some of these ingredients together. Okay, so, oops, did I drop it, Audrey? I won't rehearse this too much because both Elma and Colin have given us the context and the landscape. I think importantly though, what I would like to pick up on is the fact that we do need mechanisms to bring all of this together, as well as relationships, and I'm going to speak about all of that today. So, Elma again gave us the rationale for all of this, because what's the point if it's not about making things better for our communities? So, a range of rationales there, all embedded within Fair for All. And you'll see, first of all, that creating equity is the language we've chosen to use in North Ayrshire in relation to this. Tackling inequalities gives us a deficit base for our discussions, and we're not about deficit bases. We also want to build and rebuild a sense of community, and we did a lot of work early in this process with the Consultation Institute to actually define how we want to bring together community in place for the wider benefit. We recognised as well that within the whys we need appropriate decision making at a local level, and that very much speaks to what Colin described earlier. Better relationship with those who deliver and receive services goes without saying. Knowledge, talents of local people. Colin spoke about a very particular group there. What we need to try to understand, and hopefully today might be a bit about this, is actually using these talents to our shared advantage. So making the most of the resources we actually have. How do we bring that together? Spoke about local improvement plans. Again, we have our draft ready, as I'm sure you do, our priority areas, but also the how. We know what we need to do, but how can we do it? And through strong, connected and resilient communities, we can make the local as powerful, if not more powerful, than the national. And that really is the challenge for us. Okay, so we wanted to create closer links between spatial planning and community planning worlds, and again, Christy brings this together. We've always said in North Ayrshire, our colleague Damien isn't here today, he's the community planning analyst, and Damien has a very strong world view of how all of the data around these things can come together to deliver that holistic approach. So you'll see, and this is a quote from the Improvement Service's website, the recent consultation on the future of the Scottish planning system, which is places, people and planning, proposes an enhanced role for planning so it can nurture our places, our environment and our communities. And I can't strengthen enough the value in North Ayrshire that we put in that word. you can find it in there. For us, nurture is really important. We're very fortunate to have Zoe here from Carnegie today, and we've been having discussions with her around how we do things as opposed to what we do. And I'll come on to talk a bit more about that very soon. Okay, so I think there are lots and lots of things we could have talked about today, so I decided to focus in on a number of themes that we felt to be really important in this holistic journey. So local democracy, rethinking our culture, the North Ayrshire model, so maybe something in there about how that could be replicated elsewhere, and again just some ideas, and placemaking. And I'm not going to call it spatial planning, I'm not going to call it development planning, I'm going to call it placemaking, because essentially I think that's the relationship that we have with our communities. Okay, I need to get this out of the way first. Planning, oh my God. A whole range of plans there that we need to work within. How accessible is that to our communities? But let's just have a quick canter through this at the moment. Colin touched on it. So I don't profess to be an expert in much of this, but these are the terms that we use and the terms that our elected members have to understand in order, as we move forward, to make that integrated decision-making process truly work. So we have strategic planning and land use planning. Colin spoke about spatial planning. We have community-led planning and community planning. Now, if you live round the corner in Saltcoats and you can follow that, you're a better man than me, and I've had a bit of experience of this. Fortunately, I've got Jim and Neil over there who can keep me right in some of it, but how again do we make this accessible and real? Okay, so let's talk about how we can. I'm really proud of some of these photographs, by the way. People in the room will recognise, hopefully, a lot of the places in North Ayrshire that you see today. This is the Three Towns Growers in Ardross, and Elma and I went up last Friday to talk to them about, well, supposedly how they grow plants and how they come together as their own small community in the Three Towns allotments. Boy, were we in for a shock. Placemakers extraordinaire, and there will be another day for that, but again, Jim and Shirley and Willie can talk to you a bit about the role that the Three Towns players plays in this. So first of all, local democracy. So, Christy, and we always come back to that. I really wish you were still alive, I really do. So much of this I think that's going to underpin what we do for a very long time. So I've highlighted just the words we want to put out. So empower, involve in the design and delivery. Us, our role, creating the space and opportunities, particularly focusing less prosperous communities, and finally, to lead on to the democratic discussion, we talk a lot about inequalities of wealth and income, but those are also inequalities of power. So, as a starting point for how we involve our communities, how do we honestly encourage them to understand that A, we want to share the power, but B, they actually have the power. I didn't actually know David was coming today, so I guess if anyone can talk about this, David can, but I think, and I look at this a lot, and David said, I'm not looking for a trickle of power, but taking as a starting point that democratic power lies with people and communities. And that's a challenge for us, and we're up for that challenge, I know we are. Okay, so it's a bit like the previous slide on planning. I wanted to just not see the detail of that, but just to understand within the community planning partnership what our golden thread of performance might look like and the masters that we set. How complicated is that if you're not in this world or in this room? One of the things I was also thinking about today, and I'm sure you're all the same, this is the first time in a very, very long while that we've had an event like this where it's only been, and I use this word carefully, where it's only been professionals in the room. It's a long time since we haven't had a mixed economy in terms of our communities and, the work that we're driving. So I'm finding this a bit odd today because, we are all coming from a professional perspective. So, if you look through there, a number of things I'd want to pick out. So, community planning, the local outcomes, Improvement Plan, CLD Strategic Learning Plan, the Economic and Development Board and the agenda around that, services and teams within the council, very clearly, the health and social care locality plans, our economic plans, our local development plans. You know, where does it all sit and fit? How can we make that narrative realistic? So, absolutely. And again, we'll circulate the slides so you'll see some of the detail of this. I want to talk to you just a wee bit about this. This is still at a very draft stage and will end up in a much more simplified form, but I wanted to talk about social capital. So you have local democracy and you have the powers that we have, and that slide kind of outlines all of that. But actually, if you think about the social capital and the values, the passions, the skills and the talents that our communities have, they far outweigh and are far more powerful than all of the organisational stuff that we have in place. So we've been working with the Scottish Government around the inclusive growth work, and we have helped to develop an inclusive growth diagnostic tool, which is very much about how we include, and Colin spoke about the economic muscle of, for example, ourselves as employers. What we wanted to investigate was how, rather than move or work from a deficit-based perspective within the inclusive growth agenda. So the inclusive growth agenda in North Ayrshire identified, we've worked with colleagues in North and South closely in this, in East and South. Much of the agenda is quite deficit-based, so the challenges are around employment, the challenges are around transport, around health, around childcare. How do we move away from that dialogue and actually understand that coming from an asset base, our communities have the assets that we need to move this around? So I've been fortunate enough to be able to work with the Scottish Government around looking more closely at social capital, what the drivers are, what the influences are, and actually what impact that can have on inclusive growth. And for those of you who can see, you'll see that we start with what are the activities and tools. How does that have an impact? And how do we build in mechanisms to ensure that we have an impact on well-being and community outcomes? Capacity building outcomes within that whole discussion, and inclusive growth outcomes. So for any of you who are interested, we can share some of that work going forward. But I think it's that realisation that we're taking this work seriously. So in years gone by, this has been very much the domain of community development teams, and maybe some specialist teams. And although we've all had that ethos and that culture, how do we actually formalise this so that we can find a way to ensure that all of our community planning partners work this way, and that our community partners actually benefit from and can teach us how to work in developing social capital? Because actually it's the social capital in our communities that is going to replace so much of the public sector service delivery that Colin spoke about. I'm passionate about this part of it, you can probably tell. So equally, as part of the work towards locality partnerships, we had a very critical look at our community council support structure. So that's not a critical look at our community councils, it was how we can best support them into the future. And they still have a very big status within Scottish Government, and that was really important for us. So we did that. We've now got 10 re-established community councils in North Ayrshire, which is considerably more than previously, but more importantly, I think with a real understanding of the shared journey that we're on. So we also needed to create a mechanism, a forum, an opportunity for local people to work with community planning partners and other communities in terms of how we join the top down and the bottom up. And I'm going to speak in more detail about this in a minute or two, but I just wanted to give you an overview here today of how we've got there. So, the one thing I didn't speak about in terms of the local democracy, and I'm going to move on to that in a moment, is the role of our elected members in all of this. And I think if there is one tribute I'd like to pay today within North Ayrshire, it is to the passion, the support, the understanding and the ongoing commitment that elected members have given to this very different journey. Our locality partnership, our locality planning approach has effectively become the council's scheme of decentralisation. So from moving from regime, if you like, of area committees where the public can turn up to hear elected members, police, fire and rescue talking about local issues. We've now moved to a place where there's a culture of developing partnerships with equal representation of community representatives and elected members in our scheme of decentralisation. And I wanted you to understand that before we start, because that at heart really has been the journey that we've been on to get the buy-in, the culture and the support to provide this holistic approach to what we're doing. And much of this is rethinking culture, not just officer culture, elected member culture and our communities. It actually has taken a lot of building of trust to reassure them that actually we are serious about devolving power, about sharing power and about taking the journey we've described. And core to that was again work that we did with Davy, who's here today, in the Consultation Institute, and actually defining what it is we wanted to do. So, two main issues, one around process and one around what Colin spoke about, which is making the difference. So, relearning is a big word, and it's an ongoing process. It's not something that we will ever say is done, but we continue to relearn, and we're fortunate that we have a lot of partners nationally and locally who are helping us in that journey. So the components of that: stronger partnership with communities, co-produce future political relationships. Listen to that, that's quite a big thing to say, isn't it? Partnership I've spoken about with the Consultation Institute. I always spoke about the relationship with the CPP. One of the things that has made this real for us and continues to allow us to take forward the aspirations is that relationship with our CPP partners, and I'm sure all of you recognise that. We've deepened that and strengthened that, and one of the big factors in this was a programme of training, and that again, you know, is a discussion which leads us into culture, understanding, forward planning. We now have 150 officers and community partners across North Ayrshire who've taken part in the accredited Consultation Institute training. 6 days of training with accreditation, which really challenges us to think about how we work with each other. Not with partners, not with communities, not with politicians, but with each other. And that has stood us in really good stead for lots of pieces of work, which I will touch on. Consultation mandates, again, you know, this is a mixture of culture and technical, but it needs to come together. We've really valued the learning that we've done around consultation mandates. And if that's not a way that you work, maybe something that, you know, is a learning to take away from today. A way in which we can jointly articulate what we need from any engagement with our communities. So, defining who needs to be involved, who has a voice, what we need to get in terms of outcomes from it, and what we'll do with the results of all of that engagement. And it develops a shared understanding of what we're trying to do, and also the scope of what we're trying to do, so we don't overpromise. You know, very clear understanding of what can be delivered at any given time. And actually, in terms of improving relationships with people, it really has been a core part of what we've done. And pre-engagement, can't talk about that enough. We don't go into consultation anymore around anything we do until the very last minute. So let's get all of this out of the way, let's get all of the discussions in place as far as we can. Doesn't always work. Never is there anything that always works, but it has become a culture now, and it's something that we try to think about in everything we do with our communities. So just to summarise there, the discussion around the culture I think is important. How do we support our communities, and our community development colleagues in the room will recognise this as an approach? So in terms of a journey, we support social networks in our communities. We encourage on that journey social participation. We encourage community cohesion. And to that end, we encourage community empowerment. And through these things, we arrive at community empowerment. We ensure good practice and engagement standards. And we do that crucial thing where we support our communities to move from bonding within their own communities, and that was the networks that Colin spoke about, communities of interest, communities of practice. We actually ensure that bonding within these communities, in some senses, is challenged and exposed and explored so that we can make sure that people come into contact with other communities, but crucially people who have more influence than they might feel that they do, and how they learn from that influence and use that influence. So a cultural shape here to what we are trying to achieve. Okay, thirdly, in terms of this journey, the North Ayrshire model. So co-design and co-production. And again, very much a shared journey with our partners underpinned by Consultation Institute. That was the opening ceremony of our biggest local festival in North Ayrshire in Irvine. It's called Minimus, excuse me, and the townhouse is assisted building to Saltcoats Town Hall. Elma spoke about the regeneration journey there, and excuse me, George will later talk to you about the vision around Irvine and how the townhouse has been part of that. So, excuse me, North Ayrshire co-production model, locality partnerships. Everything we've said has been about co-production and working together, but we needed to make it real. We needed to develop a way of doing it. Excuse me. So, I won't go into this step by step, but you will see that we've explained this in terms of phases. So, a general approach to how we would work together in terms of defining the issues with partners. Very important, obviously, with partners. The second phase, designing the solutions with partners again. And the third, delivering the solutions. And that really has underpinned both how we've developed our locality planning approach, but also how we've worked towards identifying local priorities, which again are on the agenda for later. So the first thing we did, thank you very much, Mona, I didn't think. So the first thing we did was actually to identify how people wanted to work with us together in their places, in their local areas. So rather than do that as a top-down exercise, we spent a very long time, we probably spent about 2 years discussing with local communities where they felt most comfortable in terms of our localities. Now, Colin spoke earlier about the journey around how we need to focus absolutely on our less prosperous communities, as Christy would have said. But equally, we feel really strongly in North Ayrshire that the whole discussion about social capital takes us in quite a different direction, because it's our experience, and I hope yours, that in many places the nurture of the relationships between communities where there is more social capital is one of the biggest drivers of change, support, improvement and raised aspiration in our communities where there potentially is less skills, expertise and potentially aspiration. So we were very, very clear that we didn't want our localities to be focusing solely on areas of deprivation. And Morna and I had a very long and very difficult conversation with the Scottish Government, and Stephen has given us huge support around this. We had a very clear rationale for why we want to have our localities as holistic and as, I suppose, able to contribute that range of skills, expertise and prosperity across where we live. So we have 6 localities in North Ayrshire which cover the whole of North Ayrshire. I think it's really important to stress that. So within that, we gave our communities on the geographical periphery of these localities the option to decide where they saw themselves. So where's the best fit, where can you make most of a contribution, and what would benefit you most? And we arrived at our boundaries, and to be fair, these have now been settled for 1.5 years, and we haven't had any kickback around that at all. So secondly, we have a geographical approach. How do we actually arrive at an understanding of what these localities might look like? And again, we were very clear that CPP partners and some communities and employers operate across North Ayrshire, but how do we understand the complementarities but the specifics of each of our localities? Our areas of family resilience profiles were really the underpinning of that, and you'll see there that again we worked data-driven, but worked with our communities to triangulate our understandings of what these communities mean to live in. So all of the data around health, employment, everything you can shake a stick at actually but with that local perception as well. So what did people tell us? How did we fit that into the picture? So what we have now are both high-level and deeper infographics and areas of family resilience profiles, continually updated by the CPP team to ensure that we have very accessible understandings of each of these localities. And we share these with our partners, and communities have the opportunity to contribute to that. These sit within our community planning website, and again, fantastic testament to the work of Morna and our team in terms of how we've pulled together a whole range of information, but also opportunities to contribute and participate, everything through from community, locality, spatial planning to the words of the people who live there. So I spoke earlier about the membership of our locality partnerships, very much part of that co-production process. So we did a whole range of engagement leading through to a formal consultation process around the makeup of our locality partnerships, which, as I said earlier, are our area committees cued. So through that process we learned several things: that people wanted there to be equal representation of community representatives and elected members. They very clearly told us that the voice of young people in our locality partnerships was absolutely key to this, and I'll speak a bit more, but actually I hope you will have time today to hear that from our young people who are here today. Elma said sector leading. I'm going to say Cosla Gold winning. They're up there in the corner and they're hiding the light behind a bushel, but they'll tell you about the work that they do with us, and we're extremely proud of them. Community Council representatives here as statutory members, our community planning partners, and a range of locality representatives. And for those of you who want to know more detail about that, happy to share that later on today. So I'm not going to go into this in huge detail, but the functions, and again we put a straw man, if you like, a proposal into the public domain around the engagement with this, and finally went into final consultation on it. But in terms of the functions, the partnerships are responsible for the locality plans, for the relationship with the CPP board, influencing and improving some of the service delivery locally through the locality action plans, informing the work of elected members who are clearly key members of locality partnerships, but can also have wider relationships with some of the community representatives. They're responsible for developing and implementing participatory budgeting, and Anne-Marie and John are here to talk about our journey from Community Award PB to, I think, an extensive programme, in fact almost at government target already, of mainstreaming PB approaches within North Ayrshire. The partnership's responsible for that wider engagement piece to national standards, which is key to this, and working with young people. And again, the support of the community councils in this, and very importantly, the link with the health and social care localities. We're really lucky in North Ayrshire, maybe some of it isn't luck, but our health and social care localities and our community planning localities are contiguous. So that has allowed us to work together very closely around everything I've spoken about, but particularly in deriving the local priorities within the locality action plans. So young people, this is the formal wording within the locality planning documentation. Young people's involvement will be, as a minimum, formalised by establishing reciprocal standing item arrangements between the locality partnerships and the locality youth forums partnership meetings. So we've established locality youth forums to mirror locality partnerships. We don't expect that everyone will sit around the table all the time, but the relationships are close enough to ensure that the items are covered, and the locality youth forums have a standing presence at the CPP SMT, which is a real driver for joint discussion. I spoke about the relationship with the Health and Social Care Partnership. North Ayrshire excuse me, was the first local authority to establish its joint working, and John's here from the Health and Social Care Partnership. He can talk to you about that. So effectively, there was a trail blazed, I think, John, in terms of the work that Health and Social Care did around their local plans. They have evolved and changed with the community planning approach, and we've come a long way in terms of how we're delivering actions at a local level together. And now I want to move on to placemaking, I think, which is really the heart of what we've come to today. And actually, I think most of the discussion around placemaking won't be for me today, it'll be for the people around the room, because that's where we really get into the joint working, the aspirations for North Ayrshire and for local places. But I'll touch on some of the things today that have made this happen. So, LDP2, and I think Jim won't mind me saying this, but one of the real strengths of how we have got from spatial strategy of a CPP plan through to joint work between strategic planning, connected communities and CPP partners in placemaking has been the approach that Jim's team have had in North Ayrshire, and particularly the arrival of Neil. And I think we really have done, for me, some really exciting things, Neil, in closing that gap that all of us have and probably will continue to have across departments and services and partners. But you'll see within there a number of things that have started to make sure that that journey takes away, I suppose, these two parallel developments that you closed with, Colin, and starts to try to bring these two things together as a thought process as opposed to service delivery. So bringing places alive, how do we do that? So within the components there of the work that we're jointly doing just now, we currently have our main issues report, and they will talk to you about the ways in which locality partnerships have supported, contributed to the work that has happened to develop this. So within our overall community planning approach, and again all of these things are in the website, we have our town centre audits, housing and land audit, we've got our interim environmental report, but we also have the work done around the engagement and co-production of these pieces of work, how we make it real and relevant within the locality partnerships. And as I say, I'll leave that to Jim and Neil to talk about. But essentially, that joint working started to come together now. So you'll all have taken advantage of some of the work with Scotland Towns Partnership to get to this place with the town centre audits. And I spoke earlier about the areas of family resilience reports. This is clearly a sister document, a complementary document to the work that we do, co-produce with local people and making sure that they really understand where they live and what the benefits are. The place standards have really been a revelation for those of us who don't always or haven't always had a close understanding and relationship with spatial planning, and that really has brought together for us a way to talk to communities about all of the things that matter to where they live in a holistic environment. And again, practically all of the people around the table today will talk to you about how we've used the place standard. So we're fortunate to pilot it with ADS and NHS Scotland. We've used it within a locality partnership developments, and it has not been the only part of that, but it has contributed hugely to the understanding and the perception that people have of where they live. It's been a useful baseline for the partnerships. It's allowed comparisons across localities. It's allowed us to take a deeper dive. Councillor Burns is here from the Irvine Locality Partnership today. It's allowed us within Irvine not to look at Irvine just as a locality in totality, but it's allowed us to understand the deeper and smaller communities and also the communities of interest across the localities. It's allowed us to bring local members together within that environment with local people to have discussions around the 14 domains. And again, if you're not familiar with the place standard, I don't know if our Antrim colleagues are, but again, Irene and ourselves can give you chapter and verse around that. I would certainly recommend it as an approach, really exciting. And again, I spoke about just that deeper dive. I had to show you this because I think the place standard has been one of the most enjoyable ways that we've used to engage our communities. This was one of the ARIN discussions, and I don't think I've ever been, well maybe PB has equalled it, Anne-Marie, but I don't think I've ever been in such a vibrant kind of discussion. It really opens up the dialogue in very accessible ways for our communities. Charrettes, and again I'm not going to labour this because we can have further discussion. We've had 3 formal charrettes today, Go Garnock, which will contribute to the discussion around the Garnock Master Plan. We've had 3 towns charrette, which the team today will really enthuse you around and Cumbria, we're doing some work in Cumbria around cars and around redevelopment of the local infrastructure. So again, integrating communities within the local partnership model, we've used the Charrette specifically for that purpose, working with Irene, working with Willie, a very clear focus on how we use Charrettes to bring people together within the locality planning model. And again, how we share the results, really crucial to how we take forward the next stages of the work in our local areas. So again, development of locality plan, closing the name of the 3 towns. How do you bring 3 towns together who've always had their very specific dynamics? How do you bring them together into a place where the locality partnership addresses these more strategic and higher level issues that can make the real difference in our communities? And the locality planning journey has been very much about that. How do we get away from the very specific and local to actually joining us and our communities up to making that real difference at local level that can counteract the national policies? So, where are we now? We're in Millport, obviously, because that's where that photograph is. That's one of our island communities. Where are we in terms of this journey? So we'll speak in detail about the difference that's been made at a local level, from a strategic level. We've got to a place now where our locality plans are all in draft on the community planning website, so have a look at that. And our locality plans now bring together the priorities from health and social care partnerships, our local economic plans, the relevant sections of LDP2 and the journey we're on there, actions to address local inequalities in our locality plans, and the priorities within the community learning and development strategic plans at a local level. So that holistic approach which allows us to see the national and local landscape together in a way that allows us to do that work which can be influenced and influenceable in our local communities. Just a quick whistle-stop tour of our locality priorities, so within health and social care and within community planning partnership. If you overlay these one over the other, you'll see that in some places the priorities are identical, but in every locality there's a very direct relationship. And increasingly we're bringing together at CPP board and SMT level the opportunity for these discussions to take place to move that discussion forward together. So what's working? Shared priorities, the shared training, PB, place standard, CLD strategic plans at locality level, the developing cohesion and maturity, I think, of locality partnerships. And I don't think we can underestimate the impact that recent local government elections had on that, because I think we were at that stage where we were very much sort of forming relationships and forming locality partnerships. We had a considerable number of new elected members, new locality representatives to move into that. So at a very early stage of all of that formation, we really had to do a lot of re-establishment again. So moving forward, I think in an even more powerful way with the maturity of the partnerships and community council representation. What needs improved? Again, post-local government election partnerships, working really hard to make sure that all elected members and community reps are up to speed in the journey that we've been on and the reasons for it. An important issue in terms of parity of esteem, we've spoken about social capital, we've spoken about devolving and sharing responsibility. How do we ensure that there's genuine parity of esteem among the partners around that table? So what are the ingredients of that? Is it a top-down capacity building approach where we make sure that people are skilled in the skills that we expect them to have? Surely not. Is it kindness? Is it ensuring actually that we all have a complete understanding of what's going on in the room before we proceed to make shared discussions? What's it about? Is it the culture? Is it the process? Is it both? Increased engagement with the wider community. We've called it, and again, supported by our partners, we've called it participation by experience. We started off with participation by expertise, but immediately that becomes an exclusive conversation. So if you're not an expert in something, can you be there? Actually, everyone who is part of it is an expert, but it may not be about the things they would choose to be an expert around. So if it is addiction, or if it's homelessness, you're still very experienced and have huge contributions to make. So that's felt and has proven to be an inclusive approach. And what needs improved? The further integration of spatial and community planning approaches, because we're in a really important journey here, and I think we can do even better. Just a wee bit about ourselves in terms of innovation. So we were fortunate enough through the Consultation Institute to receive the National Award. And again, that's a journey that's never ending. Our next steps are, we've just appointed a specific participant, and Marie's over there, specific participation and engagement officer for the Council and the Community Planning Partnership, to make sure that we continue to work in excellence and ensuring that these standards are maintained. CLD inspection looked at the ways in which we have that deep reach into our communities. We spoke about our young people in the COSLA Awards, good practice events and conferences, not because we do things any better, but we do them by our own lights, and because we hope that we've taken a local approach to what are intransigent national problems and allowed that to go forward. And our participatory budgeting approach contributed to the ABSI Council of the Year just a month ago. So, again, when the slides are circulated, you'll see this. I want to thank Morna for this. Morna has recently been our internal high-impact leadership programme, and using Cotter's theory of change, she's looked at how our locality partnership journey can, in a sense, be modelled, and potentially, a bit like the social capital work, could potentially be used, replicated, or pinched in some cases, I guess, if you feel it's helpful, but certainly adapted in other places. So thanks for that, Morna. I think that's just brought a different way of thinking to the work that we've been doing. Can I move on, Elma? Yeah. So, next steps. And again, I wanted to talk about making some of this real. So, the strategy's fine, the local action plans are fine, and the relationships and the culture that we have is fine, and all a work in progress. But how do we convince our partners, and particularly our communities, that we're putting our money where our mouth is? And that's been something, and the leaders here today, it's something that I think across Scotland, I feel probably like the most fortunate person in Scotland to be talking about this slide today. The Council has this year provided a community investment fund of £3 million to support the locality priorities that are emerging from the locality partnership plans. So a real sense for our communities that their voices have been taken seriously. Elma spoke at length about participatory budgeting and the journey we've been on, and the mainstreaming of that work through streets and environmental services. We've also mainstreamed in a participatory budgeting way the way we run our library services. So the community voice has dictated the opening hours, the resources, all of that work. And again, we've saved a considerable amount of money through that joint journey. Same with youth services. Core funding from youth services is spent via PB, and there are other examples as well. We've also got new funding for a sustainable community food plan, and that's why we don't want to preempt that pledge that Elma spoke about earlier, because we're developing that with the people who need it most. We have £850,000 of a poverty challenge fund, and again, some of that will be for use by our communities, some of that will be strategic support, for example, through our basic income work and through our work in mentoring our care leavers. The Health and Social Care Challenge Fund of £2.6 million, again, for use with the third sector, working to co-produce solutions. I've spoken about PB. Our Community PB Awards a further £100,000 this year for grants directly to organisations. However, this year what we'll do is ensure that the bids and the priorities link directly to our locality planning priorities. So we'll see quick wins, we'll see the difference that can be made at a local level. We've been fortunate enough to be offered a Poverty Truth Commission by Social Justice Unit of Scottish Government, and that will start immediately, and that will be about giving people on the ground a real voice. So an advocacy role for people in our communities to Scottish Government through our community commissioners. And finally, and I wanted to stop with this, that whole journey which takes us back to the publication of our local development plan too, which allows us to enshrine all of that thinking and all of the work that's been done with our communities within that approach to spatial and community planning. So thank you. That's taken a while this morning, and I think in conversation with people earlier on, they were keen to hear some of the components of what we've done. So thanks for giving me the chance to share that with you today. Thank you.